Well, that's a little piece of the ballet. I mean, that's part of the hope, the dawn, and to give us all a chance.
I think we'll just say the name of the album again, which is The Shankar Family.
And Friends.
And it's on
and all those
George's new record label.
And all those people who think, yeah, and Friends, that's old hat. I'll tell you why I wanted that to be that, because when it says Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, and George Harrison and Friends, and, you know, Charlie Chaplin and Friends, it's been used to death. And all those people who think that that's old hat, I'll tell you why I did that, is because Ravi Shankar has been well received by people who like classical Indian music. But he spent 15 years touring the world, doing one-night stands, staying in Howard Johnson's. I mean, the Beatles could... we gave up touring after 3 years. It was too much. He's been doing it for 15 years and going everywhere. And now he's got an audience for classical music, and he's earned it. But then, that in itself has pigeonholed him into the whole of being a classical sitar Indian musician, whereas actually that's only the surface of that man, you know, that he's so fantastic as a composer. And this is just a hint. I mean, this album is so refreshing musically if people can listen to it with an open mind, and it's so refreshing. And I tell you, Ravi Shankar will knock spots off Tchaikovsky and a lot of them. And all you Tchaikovsky fans and Bach and Beethoven, okay, they were great, but they're all dead. Who is there now? Who's writing anything good now? Who's a good composer now? Stravinsky's probably dead too. And then you've got, you know, all the other guys who's ripping off Stravinsky and all them, and all the symphony orchestras who's trying their best to copy the last copy of the copy of the copy of Bach. But who's actually composing really good, fresh music now? You know, well, I don't know, but I know Ravi is, and people need to realise that he's not just in a pigeonhole of being a sitar player, he's a composer. And, you know, he's something else. God bless him.
I'd like to talk actually about the Dark Horse label and Splinter and of course Ravi Shankar. Why did you get the label together in the first place? Why didn't you go through Apple?
Because Apple seemed to, as Newton said, all apples must fall. I mean, Apple was just going through such chaos from a business point of view anyway, and at that time, John and Paul didn't really want to know about it. You know, they were getting ready to sweep Apple Records underneath the carpet. And Ringo and I were planning to try and keep it going, and there was so much problem, you know, just from old contracts, that it seemed simpler just to start afresh. Yeah, I'd love to get my headphones going, because I feel as though I'm not really on, you see.
Well, look, I'll tell you what, I'll play a track from Splinter, Splinter's album. This is Gravy Train, I believe. Splinter were discovered by the lovable Mal Evans, weren't they?
Yeah, well, I suppose if you use the word discovered, you could say that. They were in a band years ago called Half Breed that Mal Evans, who has been with Beatles for years, he brought a tape and tried to get him on Apple. And I remember listening and saying, well, it's not bad, you know, I don't think it's that good. He said, well, just listen, it's a singer, really. So we didn't do anything with him, but Mal when John made a record, Lennon made a record of Oz to help in Oz's defence. He made a song called God Save Oz, and the Oz people couldn't sing so good, so he got Bill Elliott to sing. And they split up from that band, and then about a year ago, I was involved making a film called Little Malcolm and His Struggle Against the Eunuchs, and in this film there was a part where we needed somebody in a nightclub scene, just in the background singing a tune. And so Mal Evans brought along those two guys, and they did this song, a song for the film, which really fitted well. And I thought, because the film is not the sort of film that's easy to sort of sell, you know, so this song was such a hit, I thought, if I could make a hit, then maybe the film people would be more interested in the movie. So I went to do a single with them, but then I heard the rest of the songs, and they were so good, I got involved making the album. And the song from Little Malcolm still isn't out yet because we did too many songs. Actually.
Is the film actually going to be released now?
Yeah, the film is just is fantastic. It's really it doesn't have distribution at the moment, but we put it in the Berlin Film Festival, and it won the Silver Award. John Hurt, the actor who plays the part of Little Malcolm, won the award, and I just found out yesterday that we won the Gold Award of the Atlanta Film Festival. So I mean, from that point of view, it's really very good.
You produced the album, and most of it was recorded in your home studio, wasn't it?
It was recorded, yeah, in David Niven's fridge, actually. No, at Henley-on-Thames.
Yeah.
No, we built a little studio at home to save the drive up and down the M4. And the studio is really very nice. Little plug for Eddie Veal of Audiotech, because he did a fantastic job, and it sounds really nice, you know, because most home studios have a lot of trouble, you know. And it's not really practical in some cases for people to have a home studio, but in this case it seems to have worked, in as much as I learned from John Lennon's studio, and he built an 8-track in Ascot, which this guy Eddie had worked on. So after the studio got going, John recorded Imagine album there, and when he started recording, he found that there were certain things about it. He started off just wanting a simple little 8-track studio, but actually when we got down to it, was with Phil Spector and everything, he wanted tape echo on everything, 49 guitar players, and there just wasn't enough facilities. So, I mean, I built the studio basically to have as standard equipment things which in normal studios, you know, you ask the engineer, well, I want to do this, and he says, oh, you can't do that, you'll do that on Remix. Or in EMI, they'd phone up some guy and he'd come in a white coat about 8 hours later pushing a trolley, and it's all a big deal to get something which you've done, you know, on every record. So I wanted that built in as standard equipment. So consequently, the studio at Henley is 5 years ahead of all the studios in London. And that's actually not my opinion, that's the opinion of the guy who builds record plants and places in... You know, but that is thing, because it's not a commercial studio. I spent my own money to do, you know, what I wanted, whereas a commercial studio is catering to the masses, and they're going to have lots of people in there stomping all over the place, putting their feet and knocking the drinks down the mixer. And so it's not really practical to put out such a big outlay, particularly if you have 5 studios.
Going back to Splinter, lots of famous musos played on it. I mean, they had a lot of help.
Not really. I mean...
Klaus Voormann.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everybody I know is famous. I don't know anybody who isn't famous. So it's not really that we're putting famous people on. It's just that my friends,
the best,
in some way, and even if they were unfamous when I first met them, like Klaus Voormann, nobody had ever heard of him, but now he's famous.
George, I'd like to sort of bring in one point that obviously I've never met you before, and the image that I had of you by reading all the pop papers and all the things about you was that you were terribly sort of into mysticism and pretty far out and all that. And you're very down to earth now that we actually meet.
I'm very practical.
But the press paint a totally different picture of you.
Yeah, because the press are such dummies, generally speaking. I mean, there are some great writers and in some ways do a useful job, but generally speaking, they're such a bunch of dummies that the whole thing is just a sellopaper with some stupid sort of headline or some type of thing. So they do tend to misrepresent to the masses what's happening. My image has come across like I'm some weird old mystical ex-Beatle, the gentle giant of pop, you know, what's all that?
But I think that people obviously think that because the 4 of you went to India, and then you came back from India, and you're the only one that sort of got anything concrete out of it, that you're, you know, really into this sort of mysticism thing.
You know, I think the others did get a little. I mean, I would really be very disappointed to think that Ringo, Paul and John didn't get anything out of it. But it's the way we sort of viewed it. You see, because first of all, I mean, I got into India through Indian music and through Ravi Shankar. And I had my association with Ravi, who in my life has been one of the greatest blessings, in as much as he's helped me have an alternate point of view on music and on life and on cultures and on the whole, you know, origin of where we're all coming from. And through his discretion, then I had a feel for India before I went there with the rest of John Paul and Ringo. Now, John is Lennon. He's fantastic. He's no dummy, and he knew there's something in that thing, the meditation. I mean, if I could start getting into that dialogue by saying the first thing that I read that really impressed me, because I was almost a Catholic, I was almost brought up as a Catholic, but when I was about 11 and I was sitting in this church with all these people who could well have been in the Red Lion or the Angel on the Bridge, the only thing that came across to me in the church at all was these oil paintings of Christ struggling up the hill with the cross on his back. And I thought, well, you know, that looks heavy. There's something going on there. But as to the rest of the building and the priest and the people, you know, I just thought, it's stupid. You know, I can't get anything out of this.
Can I
Actually,
quickly continue that discussion that we were having before, because it
about
brings
the bombs and all that.
Brings us on to the Material World Foundation. Which, I mean, could you explain that? Because a lot of what you do is for the Material World Foundation, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. I mean, there's so many things, you know, it's hard just to précis everything into a few minutes, but in the time when we were in India and John and Paul came back to England and started Apple, I mean, it was an idea to start our own company because Brian Epstein had died and there was no future with, you know, the furniture business, so we decided we'd go on our own. And at that point, Apple, because we were basically nice people, wanted to, because we had to, in a way, fight our way up. And, you know, we were turned down by everybody, like everybody who's trying to make something, you know, goes through that one. We were turned down by everybody too, and we wanted to try and be nice, except it backfired because of our lack of experience. So Apple turned into a seething pit of people, freeloaders and people wanting everything. But part of the original idea was to have a foundation in which we could help, you know, something, because people always think or thought that the Beatles, you know, well, their money is just pouring out of their ears, so it's nothing just to give a £5 or a 10 or a 20 quid or £1,000 or even £100,000. But knowing what it's like with the British government, you know, I mean, it's something like if I spend £10, I'm able to earn 100 or 150 quid to spend £10. So if I go around giving people tenors out my pocket all the time, it's really I'm giving them 100 quid. So Apple, we thought of the idea of the foundation, but like so many other good ideas, they got lost in the chaos. And then coming further up into like 1970 or 71, I forget, when the Bangladesh situation occurred. Now, if I'd have had a foundation then, we could have sponsored the concert and the money could have gone there as quick as possible without any problems. But Bangladesh was such a quick thing and it was so important that it should happen as soon as possible. So there was no real planning for that. Also, the manager we had at the time was on his holidays and not all that keen to do it on that date. He wanted to postpone it, but you can't postpone things when people are getting, you know, dying and doing that. I mean, it was an emergency. So we set up the foundation. It took 3 years, and then you need money to give away, right? So I thought the easiest way to do it is to just give the copyrights of my songs. So I donate the copyrights of my songs, and when I make a record, if it sells, then the money goes to the receiver for the performance, and the money that the publisher or songwriter, or publisher and songwriter would normally get, goes to the foundation, so I can fund it. And so then with that money, I can then give, if the Red Cross says, give us £1, I can give them £1, and it's £1. I don't have to earn 10 to give, you know.
Is it the same sort of thing with Dark Horse, your new record label?
No, Dark Horse is just a sort of label. It's really, you know, my involvement with that is purely just like an outlet. You know, I just do whatever I produce now, I'll produce, which goes to Dark Horse, and they in turn have a deal with A&M, and it's distributed by them. I mean, things about it, you know, is obviously my influence, like the logos and things like that, because most of the stuff will be what I produce, Although Dark Horse,